Good morning, everybody. It is truly an honor to be here, and I'm grateful to have a chance to share with you what I'm so excited about. Today, I want to talk about not only the next few decades ahead, but really how an extraordinary rate of innovation and breakthroughs is leading towards a world of unprecedented abundance. So let's dive in. I believe that we are living into a world, the next few decades, where we're going to be able to meet the needs of every man, woman, and child on this planet. Now, when I speak about this, most of us don't believe that, or most of us have doubts, and I want you to realize that we are thinking about the future in a local and linear fashion. What I mean by that is, as we evolved as humans in the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, the world back then was local and linear. Everything that affected you was within a day's walk. If something happened on the other side of the planet, you knew nothing about it. Life was linear because nothing changed century to century, decade to decade. The world of your great-grandparents, you, your kids, their kids was the same. But today, we're living in a world that's very different, right? Today, the world is global and exponential. Something happens to the other side of the planet, you know about it seconds later. Your computers know about it microseconds later. The world isn't changing century to century or decade to decade. It's changing year to year. So if I were to plot this, it looks like this. This red line is us. It's our citizens, it's our government, it's everyone around the world. It's us humans. We are linear thinkers. None of us have had a software or hardware upgrade, perhaps since birth. The other line, the yellow line, is the technology in our world that we're creating, that we're using. It's artificial intelligence, robotics, synthetic biology, digital printing, computers, networks, sensors. They're exploding right now. And the difference between that linear thinking and that exponential growth is either disruptive stress or disruptive opportunity, depending on your point of view. If you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that's worried about your quarterly returns, and some kid in a garage comes up with this invention that puts you out of business, it's disruptive stress. If you're the kid in the garage, it's disruptive opportunity. So to give you an example of this difference between local and linear thinking in a global and exponential world, let me use a company we all know well called Kodak, right? Kodak as a corporation was known around the planet, one of the strongest brands in the technology world. In 1996, Kodak has 140,000 employees. It has a market cap of $28 billion. And 20 years earlier, in 1976, a gentleman by the name of Sasson had come up with the first digital camera. He invented it in the labs inside Kodak. And that digital camera was about the size of a small toaster oven. And when he took that to the board of Kodak and he said, "Here it is, the future of Kodak," they said, "What, are you joking? This digital camera is a toy. It takes 12 black and white digital images, 0.01 megapixels. We're Kodak. We make beautiful high-resolution photographs, not this thing." But even though Kodak had invented the technology, they owned the patents, they were thinking in a linear fashion. And you may know the rest of the story. 2012, Kodak goes bankrupt, put out of business by the very technology that they invented in their labs, because they were thinking linearly while the technology was exploding exponentially. But in the same year, in 2012, another company in the digital imagery business called Instagram is acquired by Facebook for $1 billion, but they have 13 employees. You see, this is what's happening over and over again right now. We're going from a world of linear thinking companies to exponential ones. And I call this the new Kodak moment in time when a linear thinking company is put out of business by exponential technologies. So what does this mean? This is a statistic from the Babson School of Business that says in 10 years' time, 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies, S&P 500 companies, will no longer exist. They'll be acquired, they'll go bankrupt, they'll be dismissed, displaced by companies we haven't even heard about yet. Today, the rate of going from I have an idea to I run $1 billion company is happening faster and faster and faster. So I study this. I study this at a university that I founded in Silicon Valley with Ray Kurzweil called Singularity University. The university is underwritten and backed by Google and Cisco and Autodesk and Genentech. And we study exponential technologies. We study those technologies that are doubling every year in price performance. And we run a number of programs, and I'm very proud that we have a number of Emirati alumni of our programs. We run programs at the graduate level. We run a graduate studies program. And in this program, we bring students in for 10 weeks. And during the 10 weeks' time, we ask them to study all these exponential technologies and then to start a company that can impact 1 billion people positively within 10 years. That's what a person can do today. That's what an entrepreneur can do. You can start a company that can impact 1 billion people positively within a decade. We call this 10 to the 9th plus companies. We also run executive programs for top executives around the world. And then finally, we run a program called our Innovation Partners Program, and it's for the Fortune 100 companies, Coca-Cola, Cisco, Dow Chemical, and so forth, that are part of the group. So our curriculum is a mix of technologies on one side, from AI, robotics, synthetic biology. But on the other side, we look at how do you tap the crowd for incentive prizes, data mining competitions, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. Because in this hyper-connected world of billions of people, your innovation doesn't come from inside your company anymore. Innovation comes from you asking the right questions to the world and them helping you solve your problems. So what does exponential growth feel like? Remember I said we are linear thinkers in this world. Our minds are wired to think in a linear fashion. So if I said to you, take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you end up 30 meters away. And all of us can say, I'll be there in 5 steps, 10 steps, 20 steps, and so forth. But if I said to you, take 30 exponential steps, 30 doublings, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, where will you be in 30 doublings? Very few of us, unless you've been memorized, would say, I'm going to be 1 billion meters away. Put differently, I will have gone around the Earth 26 times. So the difference between our linear thinking mind saying it'll be 30 meters over there versus exponential growth, I've gone around the planet 26 times, is the point. That's why Kodak could never catch up once they missed the boat. So I want to give you some examples of what this looks like and feels like. This computer I have here is 1982. It's called the Osborne. If you were an accountant, you might have had one of these. It was about the size of a suitcase. And it was, $2,500 US, 28 pounds. 25 years later, that computer is an iPhone, except this iPhone is 1/100th the weight, 150 times faster, 100,000 times more memory, and we have 150,000-fold improvement in 25 years. Physically, this is what we're seeing in 25 years of doublings. 25 years after the iPhone, the computer will effectively be everywhere. It'll be ubiquitous, it'll be in the cloud, it will be free, it will be always on. That's where we're almost at today. Let's look at a few other technologies. This is Steven Sasson, who I mentioned, who made the digital camera. You can see how big it is, and you can imagine why the board of directors of Kodak ignored him when he came in and said it takes 12 black and white images. But this camera was 4 pounds, $10,000. Today, the camera you can buy is 1,000 times better resolution, lighter, cheaper, 1 billion-fold improvement. Let's take a few more looks. This is the guidance and control system for the early intercontinental ballistic missiles. Today, the same technology you buy for an accelerometer for $1 or a gyroscope for $3. Right? In the future, it will be in molecular memory, cost nothing. Let's look at one more. This is the first GPS receiver. Right? $120,000, 50 pounds. Today, it fits on your fingertip. And the point to make is it doesn't stop here. It continues. This rate of innovation, the price coming down, the miniaturization, the capabilities continue on and on and on. So what makes this all possible is this curve. This curve is the rate of growth of computer speeds. On the bottom here, we have 110 years. On the left axis, it's a log scale. It's how much computer power can $1,000 buy you. And if you look on this curve, what you see is that the rate at which computers were getting faster and faster, and this is a log scale, so it's exponential growth, is pretty constant. You don't see World War I or World War II or recessions or depressions. The rate at which computers are getting faster is independent of what's going on in the world. We're using faster computers to build faster computers. And if that goes on, here is what you see. So the microprocessor driving this presentation is a circa 2010 Intel processor. It calculates at 100 billion calculations per second, 10 to the 11 cycles per second. It's just a number. It also happens to be more computing power than the US government had in the 80s, right? 9 years from now, in 2023, the average computer you can go and buy for $1,000 will be calculating at 10 to the 16th cycles per second, which again is just a number, but if you speak to someone who studies the brain, they will tell you that's the rate at which your brain and my brain thinks. It's the rate at which your brain does visual and auditory pattern recognition. So what happens when $1,000 9 years from now can buy you the capacity of the human mind to think? But it doesn't stop there because, another 25 years later, now the average $1,000 is buying you the rate of the entire human race. Now your kid's homework gets really easy. So what we're seeing is that faster computers and cheaper computers are now driving a whole array of technologies. They're driving ubiquitous networks, sensors, AI, robotics, 3D printing, and so forth. And I want to share some insights along the way as I'm speaking about this. The first insight I want to share is that the only constant is change. And the rate of change is increasing. Technological convergence is going to lead to unexpected results. It's not enough to just say computers are getting faster. It's the fact that computers and AI and robotics and 3D printing and all these technologies are coming together and converging to change the world. This is the work that we do in Singularity University, and it's the realization that today an entrepreneur with access to this power, to these kinds of technologies, literally has more capabilities than governments, the largest corporations, had just a couple of decades ago. So let's focus in on a few of these technologies to give you a sense of where they are and where they're going. And I should mention, by the way, that what I'm giving you is a very quick overview of what we teach at Singularity University, normally in a week's time, so you'll excuse me if we're condensing it from 7 days to 7 minutes. So I'm going to begin first with a conversation about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is right now changing our world in an extraordinary fashion. You may know it as Siri on your iPhone, but that's a tiny fraction of 1%. Artificial intelligence is the ability for a computer to understand intimately what you need, what you want, what you're thinking, what information you need before you know you need it, and to provide this information to you instantly. IBM 2 years ago did a very visible demonstration of AI with a game show called Jeopardy, which I hope some of you know. It's one of the most difficult game shows out there where a question is asked, you have to answer it properly. And to show how amazing IBM's Watson computer, named after IBM's founder, James Watson, was, they went up against the two-time champions, the guy on the left who had won the most money, and the guy on the right who had won the most games. And I want to show you a clip of what it looked like for Watson. And by the way, Watson is in a small room, half the size of the stage. It's not connected to the internet. It had downloaded Wikipedia, and that was the only memory it had. So let's watch.
Ken, you're in the first position. Please make a selection.
Louder, please.
I've never said this on TV. Chicks dig me for 200, please, Jimmy.
Kathleen Kenyon's excavation of this city, mentioned in Joshua, showed the walls had been repaired 17 times. Watson.
What is Jericho?
Correct.
400, same category.
This mystery author and her archaeologist hubby dug in hopes of finding the lost Syrian city of Urkesh. Watson.
Who is Agatha Christie?
Correct. Watson.
Who is Mary Leakey?
You're right. Watson.
What is Crete?
Yes.
Let's finish Chicks Dig Me.
Edmel.
So what is Watson? Watson is an array of core processors that was able to read 1 million books a second. It had downloaded Wikipedia into its memory. It was not connected to the internet. And what's incredible is that IBM has now taken Watson and put it onto the cloud. And what this means is that as we're heading towards the future, anyone, anywhere in the world, on a cell phone, a teenager in Mumbai, anyone, can have access to this level of knowledge, ask any question, and have an answer better than the best physicians or the best teachers can provide you. IBM's first focus is using AI to do diagnostics, and it's already demonstrated that it is far better at diagnosing cancer than any doctor. I went to medical school, and believe me, a year after I left, I had forgotten most of what I had learned. It's so difficult right now. The amount of knowledge that a physician has to integrate cannot possibly be held inside the human mind. So what are the insights here around artificial intelligence? The first is that AI can today do most things better than humans. Last year, a competition demonstrated that you show an AI a photograph, and that AI can tell you what the photograph is more accurately than a person. AI can understand and translate, for Google Translate, for example, between 80 different language pairs. It can write, it can read. So what does that mean? It means that 50% of our service jobs everywhere in the world will be up for grabs to AI. How are we going to handle this? Big question. AI will be empowering the individual, where an individual can have access to knowledge that typically only a CEO might have. AI will become our best physicians. I'll show you some technology around that soon enough. But also, AI will become our best teachers. So everyone on the planet, independent of how wealthy they are, where they live, will have access to the best technology for teaching that exists on the planet. Let's turn to robotics. I don't know if you recognize what this is. This is a Tesla factory. My friend Elon Musk, one of my board members, makes this electric car, the Tesla. This is their factory. Look for the humans. There's one right there. So the factories today that are producing the safest car on the planet are being driven by robots. I want to show you a company that Google just purchased. Google last quarter bought 8 robotic companies. Let's take a look at one of them called Boston Dynamics. This is Petman. You're going to see the inside in a moment. This was developed for DARPA. I want you to imagine robots walking down the street, doing shopping, or whatever the case might be. This is not 20 years from now. This is right now. This is Wildcat. Look at the reflexes when this man kicks this robot, how it reacts in almost lifelike circumstance. And I would not want to be walking through the forest when this thing comes out of the trees. The point is that these kinds of robots are coming into mass production. How they'll be used in commerce. This is a robot out of Honda. You get the picture. My friend Catherine Moore on our faculty from Singularity University was sharing information about this. These are robotics her company makes called Intuitive Surgical that allow you to beam in the best surgeon around the world, no matter where he or she is, to do surgery right then. All of a sudden, you're independent of geography. So some insights about robots. Robots also are going to impact our job market, right? I mean, I think about this when your robot starts stocking your shelves at Walmart. If you say we're going to be a company that employs humans, you're going to go out of business because you can't compete economically. So it's going to change the job market. I'm not talking about 30 or 40 years, I'm talking this decade. These robots exist now. They're going into production. They're being used. How we relate with them, how they uplift people from the menial work and allow them to do more important work, that's the decision governments are going to have to make. Robots will enter every aspect of our lives. They'll be cleaning up our homes at night. They'll be helping take care of old people. You know, instead of sending aged people to the old age home when they reach 80 or 90, they can stay in their home because a robot will help them go to the restroom when they need to. Robots will compete with imported labor forces. A place like the Emirates, for example, you know, this kind of technology will make you independent of external labor. And it's going to effectively drop the cost of labor to the cost of power, right? Once you subsidize the cost of it, it's the cost of electricity. So here's another robot. My other friend and faculty member, Brad Templeton, perhaps spoke about this yesterday. This is Google's autonomous car. In the front seat's Larry. In the back is Sergey Brin. And Eric Schmidt, the chairman, is in the back. And this is a robot that drives autonomously down the streets. And this is near Stanford University. And these robots have gone over 500,000 miles in these cars. These cars, I've driven in it. After a few minutes, you feel very relaxed. And the car drives itself. Every major car company on the planet has announced intentions to create autonomous cars. So I have kids that are 2.5-year-old, twin boys. By the time they're 18, they will not be driving. They'll be driving in autonomous cars. In California, we talk about high-speed trains connecting up and down the coast. What a waste of money. It's ridiculous instead we will have autonomous cars driving up and down the coast. So look at what that autonomous car is seeing. This is the sensors. On top of the car is a LiDAR, a laser imaging radar that's got 60 eye-safe lasers whizzing around, generating 750 megabytes of data per second. That one car is seeing everything going on. It's seeing an accident occurring. It's seeing a person being pickpocketed. It's seeing a squirrel cross the street. There is nothing going on there that car is not seeing. That car is absorbing information and data from around it. Now, imagine not one of these cars, but millions of these cars on the roads throughout MENA, Europe, US. There will be nothing going on the streets that are not being seen by technology. I want to hit that again. There is nothing going on in any of these streets that these cars are not imaging. If we have autonomous cars, we have ubiquitous knowledge of what's going on at every street corner. But of course, that's not the only thing. In the next 5 years, there will be 5 private orbital constellations being launched. Planet Labs is one, Skybox is another, and there are 3 others I can't speak of. And these are going to have constant imaging over the planet everywhere. If you want to know what a company's competitor is doing, you have live, high-resolution images of the productions coming into and out of their factories, looking at what's going on. And if that's not enough, we're also going to start to see armies of quadcopters giving you centimeter resolution over every city. And if that's not enough, whatever Google Glass becomes, we'll have millions of people walking around imaging everything. My point here is that the future we're heading into, not 50 years from now, this decade, is a future in which we're going to be able to see and know anything we want any time of day. So some insights. We're growing into a world of 1 trillion sensors. 1 trillion sensors sensing everything. Sensing the temperature in every single room, sensing vibration, noise, imaging, everything. We're going to head towards a world where you can ask any question and know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want, because everything is being sensed. Is privacy ending, or is it already dead? This will drive significant changes in our government and our social systems. We're going to be reinventing how we think about privacy this next decade. Now, I'll share with you one other thing that came out in the papers 2 days ago. This is a friend of mine, Jordy Rose, who's the CEO and founder of D-Wave. D-Wave is one of the top commercial quantum computing companies. They're in Vancouver. They just sold their first D-Wave quantum computers to Lockheed and to Google. And quantum computing is interesting for a number of things, but one thing, and in this article, the NSA seeks to build quantum computers that could crack most any type of encryption. When quantum computing comes out, there will be no encryption. So we've talked about that. Let's talk about 3D printing. I had a chance to tour earlier the Museum of the Future right next door. It's beautiful. I encourage all of you to go there. And 3D printing is part of the equation. I serve on the board of the top 3D printing company, 3D Systems. And 3D printing is the ability to take and manufacture anything, one layer at a time. And so there are machines, just like regular printers, but that can print in a variety of different materials. And I'll give you an example. So this is one of the employees who's got a wrench, a metal wrench, and he takes this wrench and he scans it with the scanner. And these scanners can scan it in high resolution, and you create from the scan a million-point model of it, and then you print this layer by layer by layer. And at the end, you have, when you pull out of it, a full-size metal printed wrench that works. So this is just the beginning. So what can you 3D print? You can 3D print very complex shapes. This is a polygon within a polygon within a polygon. You can print high-temperature titanium turbine blades. I was giving a very similar talk for Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE, just 2-3 weeks ago at the opening of their events. And GE is printing high-temperature injectors and turbine blades for their next-generation jet engines. Imagine being able to print in cement so you can 3D print houses. This person lost his right lower leg, scanned his left leg, reversed the image, and 3D printed a prosthetic composite. This is a full-scale motorcycle in the lobby of Autodesk, where every component was 3D printed. And then these 3D printers, what's amazing is you can print in multiple materials, and it comes out working. So this is something called the gear ring, and when you 3D print it, it comes out of the 3D printer working. Let me just back up a second. So just for fun, on the left here is a 3D printed wedding cake. We're now beginning to 3D print with even foods. And on the right are concepts for 3D printing of organs. So there are 200 different materials you can now 3D print with. What does that mean? What it means is that we're heading towards a world where manufacturing is geographically independent, where you don't have to worry about what's manufactured where. The files are in the cloud. You have 3D printers locally in your home, in your office, in your city, wherever it might be, and you 3D print what you want when you need it. Massive change in how we think about interconnectedness of the world. 3D printers are going to empower individuals and small companies to be creative. The rate of innovation is going to skyrocket because I can look at a device, I can scan it, I can use an AI to manipulate it, upload it to the cloud, and let anybody 3D print it. And finally, we're going to enter a copy economy will explode. People will copy and print. So the last technology I want to speak about is genome sequencing. This is my friend and business partner, Craig Venter. He, in 2001, sequenced the first human genome. The first person, he raced the US government and sequenced the human genome first. In 2010, he created the first synthetic life form, the first life form whose parents were an email file. So we're entering into a world where we can now sequence everybody. the cost of sequencing a genome has dropped below $1,000. Imagine if UAE were able to sequence every Emirati citizen and transform healthcare, where you know exactly what to predict and what to focus on. We're now entering a time where we're going to have extended human lifespan. There are a number of companies working on this. 100 will soon be the new 60. And then finally, biology is becoming the new programming language. Instead of programming on a computer, people are now programming in A, T, C's, and G's. So that's an overview quickly of these technologies we speak about. I want to close with a discussion about how do you crowdsource genius? How do you get the world to help you solve your problems? So since my childhood, I wanted to travel into space. I've started 15 companies taking people on weightless zero-G flights, sending people to the space station. And in the early 90s, I read about this guy, Charles Lindbergh. And I learned that in 1927, Lindbergh crossed the Atlantic, flying from New York to Paris to win a prize, a $25,000 prize. I had no idea. It turned out that Raymond Ortega puts up $25,000, and 9 different teams spent $400,000 trying to win this prize for the first person to fly between New York and Paris. And I said, wow, if I could offer a prize for private space flight, maybe this would make my dreams come true. And so I'm sharing with you a mechanism that you can solve all the grand challenges on the planet. So the idea of this prize was the following. It was going to be a $10 million prize for the first person to build a spaceship that could carry 3 adults up into space, land safely, and within 2 weeks, make the trip again. I spent 5 years trying to raise the capital. I finally met Anusha and Amir Ansari, born in Tehran, came to the US, became entrepreneurs. Her dream was to fly into space as well. They put up the funds. We named it the Ansari X Prize in their honor. We announced this $10 million competition, and we had 26 teams around the world who spent $100 million going after this $10 million competition, amazingly. Here's the winning ship, Spaceship One. It's in the Mojave Desert 9.5 years ago, October 4th, 2004. Through the night, 30,000 people had flown in, driven in to be there for that winning event. Could someone actually pull this off? Because we were asking this team to do something that only a few governments had ever done. Build a private spaceship that could take humans into space. Here's the ship burning laughing gas, nitrous oxide, and tire rubber at altitude. And then the winning moment. On the far left, Anusha and Amir Ansari, myself, Paul Allen, who funded the winning vehicle, Burt Rutan, who built it, Brian Binney, who was the pilot, and then Richard Branson, who I had dinner with last night, who came in the week before the prize was won and bought the rights to the winning technology to create Virgin Galactic. So this competition basically drove 10 billion media impressions around the world. We made the homepage of Google. And let me share with you a short video, if we can have the audio up, of what that winning moment felt like. We're announcing today something called the X Prize, a $10 million contest to privately build a spaceship that's able to carry 3 individuals, fly to 100 kilometers altitude, and do that twice inside of 2 weeks.
I have never been myself as creative as I have eyeballing this goddamn prize.
Hello and welcome to Mojave here in the high desert of California on this incredible day. Now you are going to witness history in the making.
Release. Arm. Fire.
The Ansari X Prize inspired international competition, drove regulatory reform, and made history.
The X Prize for $10 million.
It ignited
prize.
a personal spaceflight revolution.
And now the winning spaceship is hanging in the Smithsonian right next to the Spirit of St. Louis that inspired it in the first place. On the heels of that, I was able, thank you very much. On the heels of that, I was able to build a great board of trustees. I was able to recruit Larry Page and James Cameron and Elon Musk and Ratan Tata and Craig Venter and others. And at the X Prize, we focus right now on what are the world's biggest problems? Where is there a market failure? What do we wish was solved that we could go and create an X Prize and then invite people around the world to solve the problem and say, I don't care where you're from, where you've gone to school, if you solve this problem, you win. So we announced 2 years ago in partnership with Qualcomm, the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. This is a competition, $10 million for the purse. Qualcomm put up another $10 million to run it. We're asking teams to build a handheld medical device that any mother or father could use at 2 o'clock in the morning if they're in the middle of Mumbai or the middle of the Bronx, that they can talk to, they can speak to it. It has Watson AI on the cloud. You can cough on it. It can do the RNA and DNA analysis of the bacteria in your saliva. You can do a finger blood prick. And in success, it can diagnose you better than a team of board-certified doctors. We announced this competition. We have 330 teams entered from around the world. We expect a winner in the next 2 years and transform the healthcare industry. Where are we going next? The one that's near and dear to my heart is we have 880 million illiterate adults on Earth. 80 million of them are kids. They live in places we can never build schools or teach enough teachers. So we are working on a global literacy X Prize to build a piece of software that can operate on any tablet that a child can use where there are no schools, no literate adults, and go from being completely illiterate to speaking, reading, writing, and coding inside of 3 years. It's about creating a world of literacy. So if all goes well, we hope to launch that this year. So insights on incentive prizes, X prizes, whatever you might call them, I believe that any grand challenge can be solved. The number of people who have tools to solve problems are exploding. You know, the beautiful thing about these is you pay only the winner, not people who tried or had a good idea. You pay upon success. How beautiful is that, all right? You get 10 to 50 times the prize purse spent by all the teams to try and win it. And ultimately, you tap into the world's smartest innovators, no matter where they are on planet, if they work for Google or in the middle of a rocket factory in Kazakhstan. So the question I ask for the leadership here is, what challenges do the Emirates want to solve on a global scale? So I'll close in the last 10 minutes I have on this. I wrote a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. It comes from the mindset I've had running the X Prize and running Singularity University and seeing the extraordinary power that entrepreneurs have to solve problems. You see, today we live in a world where the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest market opportunities. Solve hunger, water, energy, whatever it might be, become a billionaire and help a billion people in the process. But as I went around speaking to people and saying, you know, we're heading towards a world of abundance, people would say to me, Peter, what are you, crazy? Haven't you seen the school shootings here? Haven't you heard about the economic crisis here? How can you possibly say the world is getting better than it's ever been? And the realization that came to me finally after having this reaction from people is to realize that we live in a world today where the news media is a drug pusher. And on every device that we have, our smartphones, our cell phones, our newspaper, our radio, we are being fed negative news over and over and over again in high definition. And there's a reason for this. We pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news. You see, as we were evolving in the plains and savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago, if you missed a piece of good news, like there's some food over there, well, that's too bad. But if you missed a piece of bad news, like the rustle in the leaves as a tiger, your genes are out of the gene pool. And so we evolved an ancient part of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala looks at everything we see and everything we hear and scans it for negative news. And if you see negative news, it puts you on high alert. Like there's a fire, the Dow is crashing, whatever it might be. And for that reason, open any paper, and it's 10-to-1 negative stories to positive. But you have to ask yourself the question, is that the way the world really is? And over the last 100 years, it hasn't been. Over the last 100 years, the human lifespan has more than doubled. The per capita income for every person on this planet, adjusted for inflation, has more than tripled. The cost of food has dropped 13-fold, energy has dropped 20-fold, transportation 100-fold, communications over 1,000-fold. This was the cover of The Economist a few months ago. We're heading towards the end of poverty. A friend of mine at Harvard wrote this book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, saying that we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history. You wouldn't know that reading the papers. Your chances of dying a violent death are 1/500th of what they used to be. So the question is, what has done this? What has transformed the world to living longer, having less mortality, cheaper everything? And with respect to the government officials in the room, it's been technology. Technology is that which has taken what was scarce and made it abundant. I'll use just a few examples. This is a fun one. We think of diamonds as being scarce and diamonds as being precious. This is the cover of Wired magazine. A friend of mine's company is manufacturing diamonds not at $5, it's $20 a carat, flawless diamonds in the lab today. Taking what used to be scarce and making it abundant. They have the potential over the next 3 years to be generating $3 billion of diamonds for any use you want. So what else do we consider scarce? Resources. I have a company called Planetary Resources. It's backed by a dozen billionaires, Eric Schmidt, Larry Page, Ross Perot, Richard Branson. This company is built the technology to go out to near-Earth approaching asteroids that come close to the Earth, that are rich in fuels and strategic metals. So one of these asteroids can generate 5 times, for a small fraction, of 5 times the global platinum output. Do you consider platinum group metals scarce? Maybe on Earth, but not in our solar system. It's a change of perspective. Is energy scarce? We're living in an energy economy here. But as we see, we're living in a world that's bathed in 5,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species in a year, right? We see the rate and the price of solar panels plummeting as production rates around the world are exploding. Water wars, water scarcity. We live on a water planet, right? 2/3 of our planet is covered with water. Yes, 97.5% is salt, 2% is ice. We fight over 0.5%. This is a device Dean Kamen, perhaps the greatest inventor of our time, called the slingshot. It has 2 hoses. One hose goes in anything wet, the Gulf, arsenic-infected water, the latrine. And out the other hose comes water so pure it meets the medical standards for injectable water. And Coca-Cola is taking these to every village around the planet. This Maasai warrior on a cell phone has better mobile communications than the president did 25 years ago. If they're on Google on a smartphone, they have access to more knowledge and information than the president did 15 years ago. They're living in a world of communications and information abundance. We talked about the tricorder giving us health abundance, and I'll close on this slide. This blue line is the world's population. We just crossed the 7 billion mark. This green line is internet penetration. In 2010, we had just shy of 2 billion people connected on Earth. By 2020, just 6 years from now, that number is going to be 5 billion people connected. 3 billion new minds are entering the global economy. 3 billion new consumers. 3 billion new inventors. For me, this represents the greatest era of innovation ever. If these are not your customers, they're your customers' customers. They represent tens of trillions of dollars flowing to the global economy. When they solve a problem, we all solve that problem. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're entering into the greatest era of innovation we've ever had. Thank you.